everybody, this is Bo. We want to say hello from coast to coast over to Australia, back up to Asia, across the Middle East, and over to Europe, where they are crazy about soccer and rugby. We're going to shoot across Detroit, and we're going to go to University of Sioux Falls, where we get a chance to talk football with a very successful coach and a super successful football program, Coach Kalen Deboer. How you doing, Coach?
Good. Great to be with you today.
Well, thank you for showing up, Coach. You know what? As I was doing research, and Mad Max here did a nice job of really looking at the programs across the country, you've got just an awesome story at that university for football. Could you go into a little bit for the rest of us?
Well, the University Falls football program here was something. If you go back into the '80s and before, it really wasn't too much that happened here as far as wins and losses. Probably more losses than anything. And we had a football coach by the name of Bob Young, who our football field's now named after. He just retired as the head coach in 2004. He came in 1982 and really pushed this program in the right direction, laid the groundwork. I happened to be a player for him in 1993, in which we were still struggling and went 2-8. And in 1994, we turned it around to be an 8-3. And since then, we've pretty much run from there. It's funny you ask kind of the history on our program, because we were just figuring it out at the beginning of the week. And since 1994, we are 143-23 with a 96-6 record in conference play. So we put together a string over the past 13 years that I think is pretty tough to match.
I think the interesting thing that took place, guys, our phones are acting up, so if you hear that little woman saying that start the recording, there's something Mad Max hasn't fixed yet. Max said he fixed it last week, so we apologize for that. But the interesting thing here in this program is, if I'm not mistaken, you don't have bastions of scholarships just hanging out for football. Isn't that correct, Coach?
What's that regarding the scholarships?
You don't have just a juggernaut of scholarships hanging out there. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, we get the NAI, the limit. We can have up to 24 equivalents, scholarships to disperse amongst our players. So yeah, it isn't. We definitely don't have guys walking around here getting their full education paid for. Some of it here and there gets paid for by football scholarships and so forth, but it's really split amongst a big group of players. We have about 115 guys on our football team.
Yep.
About 35 to 40 of them are redshirt.
I think the other thing that's impressive, too, with your program is that when you look at a program such as yours, it is really back to the purity of the sporting event. It's back to the way football used to be. The fact that you've mounted all these wins with heart, soul, and blood, and you don't have ESPN, you don't have Nike, you don't have major contracts being issued for millions and millions of dollars. You're basically almost like a volunteer on how you're building this program. You're doing it out of love of football. Could you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, certainly. We have a staff of 3 full-time coaches, which is actually up from what it used to be, and the rest are really part-time coaches, and they work very hard. It's really a commitment to the university and a commitment to the players to try to give them a great experience playing the wonderful game of football, as well as get their education. The things we teach are the fundamentals of respect and being accountable and responsible. And I think those things come into play whether you're in the real world or on the football field. And the respect thing is and the word class, I guess, are 2 things we really hit on each and every week. We wouldn't have won 58 of our last 59 conference games if it wasn't for us respecting what our opponents can do on the football field and taking it a game.
I think the other thing that's kind of impressive with your program is the only other program that can come close is Grand Valley. I don't think there's a Division I program across the country that can even come close. I don't even think a Division I AA can even come close to the success rate of your predecessor and the success rate you're having right now. Can you speak about that a little bit?
Well, Coach Young is the predecessor you're talking about, and he is one of the most well-known coaches in NAI. I'm sure someday he'll be in the NAI Hall of Fame. Won a national championship in 1996 as the head coach, of which I was able to play underneath him that year. And as time continued on through the late 90s and ended up to 2004, He brought us to the national semifinals in '97, 2002, and 2003, where we had all within a touchdown loss of going to the national championship. And in 2001, we did make it back to the national championship, of which I was then an assistant coach under him as the offensive coordinator. So we've been in the semifinals, I think, 7 times throughout the years, and 3 times in the national championship.
I think it's really impressive here is that the player has now become the executioner of the of the team. I mean, you have in 10 years apart, you have 2 national championships. You've got title runs all over the place. I just don't see another program bringing as much. And because you were a player, a championship to me is a championship, whether you're a 4th grader or a Division I. And a lot of people constantly say, yeah, but it's an NAIA. Well, if I'm not mistaken, everybody who was in NAIA is NAIA, and you are playing the champions or the best of the best in your division when you go into that. And how do you see that as far as the landscape? I would, in my mind, your national championship is just as valid as USC's or Notre Dame's or anybody else of the big Division I programs.
Oh, yeah, there's no question. It's all relative, and we have so many scholarships to work with. We're a certain size school, and within that category, we played 90 to we're in competition with over 90 other NAIA schools, and to be the best of all of them for that single season is something we're very proud of. And I think, getting back to whether win a championship as a coach or a player, I think it's a lot more rewarding as a coach, just because you realize all the things that have to take place, and all the things that have to happen just the right way, whether it's staying healthy or catching a break at the end of the game. Those things all have to work out in order for you to win the big games, because there are at least 10 teams that are all capable of winning a national championship each and every year.
Now, I'm looking at your schedule right now. You've got some very entertaining numbers. I'm sure your fans enjoy every time you step out there, because you do bring the offense, and judging by the scores, you bring the defense as well.
Yeah, our defense is really what we hang our hat on. As far as what's going to take us down the road in the playoffs, we were the number 1 defense in the country in 2002. And we were also number 1 defense in the country last year, and we're working our way up the ladder again, getting stronger and stronger. In fact, this last week, we only allowed 93 yards of total offense, and I think 45 rushing against the number 1 team in the conference that had a rushing attack. So we're getting stronger. Our defense is what we hang our hat on. It's what's going to win championships, especially here in South Dakota when the weather gets a little rough. Our offense is averaging right about 49 points a game and close to 500 yards. We love to be explosive. Our fans love it. They get a little spoiled, though, once in a while, because, games within 20 points, it seems, in the third quarter, they start getting a little frustrated and wondering what's really going on, and whether, it's almost like we're losing sometimes. So they get a little spoiled, but I think they enjoy watching our football team.
Yeah, you can sort of speak on that as what the Yankees go through, what the Atlanta Braves go through, is having a tradition of winning. And when the game gets close, you've got fans that are just, I'm sure, are beside themselves. Even though you haven't lost yet, I'm sure they feel like it in some of those games. 34-28, boy, we almost lost that one. Yeah.
It's a lot of questions get asked on what went wrong, and sometimes you just got to, tell them, hey, we played a very good football team today, and they came ready to play us, and those are the answers you got to give, and those are great settings for our football team to learn from, because if we're going to win a national championship or play in the playoffs, go deep, we're going to be in some of those tight games, and so those are good to be a part of their great learning experiences for our football team.
And the last thing, too, is that you can speak on this now going for the school's 3rd and your 2nd. Grand Valley has just amount of reputation in Division II for having 4 out of 5 national championships. They're poised to do it again. Appalachian State, even with their losses, going for their 3rd straight. You're going for number 2. How do you approach this season versus last season, and how do you keep yourself grounded, as well as how do you keep the seniors and juniors coming up grounded?
Well, first of all, referring to Grand Valley State, I got a picture of Coach Martin sitting right here on my desk. He's on the front cover.